sat down opposite the temple treasury and observed how the people put money into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow also came and put in 2 small coins worth a few cents. Calling his disciples into himself, he said to them, "Truly, I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the other contributors to the treasury. For they have contributed out of their immense wealth, but she, from her poverty, has contributed all that she had to live on." My brothers and sisters, the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
In the first reading today, taken from the first book of Kings, we hear the story of a starving widow who is out gathering up a few sticks to feed her fire so that she can cook the very last of her food for her little son and for herself before they die. The prophet Elijah comes along and he says, "Can I have some of that?" Question: if you were that widow, what would you do? In the gospel, which is taken from the end of the chapter 12 of St. Mark's gospel, a widow takes all of her money, which isn't very much, all that she has to live on, and she puts it into the temple treasury. Question: if you were that widow in those circumstances, what would you do? In the second reading that we heard today from the letter to the Hebrews, Jesus is compared to the high priest who enters the Holy of Holies year after year to offer animal sacrifices for the forgiveness of sins. That's a primitive idea, that if you kill a few animals, God will somehow in turn forgive human sins. It was an idea that was common in biblical times to the Jews and to other people. The letter to the Hebrews says that there's a difference between Jesus and the high priest, because the high priest went in and they offered animal sacrifice. Jesus offered himself. The second difference is that the high priest had to go in year after year to offer sin sacrifices, whereas Jesus offered himself one time only. Question: if you were Jesus, what would you do? Does it make any sense for your life? And in the case of the first widow, the life of her son on the line in order to do good for others? Somebody just put his life on the line there. The first widow shared her last meal with Elijah. The second widow gave her money to the temple. Jesus kept preaching openly even though he knew that the authorities were out to get him. Does any of that make sense? There's a story told about a vixen, a female fox, who had 3 cubs. Once, when she was very ill and couldn't take care of the cubs, she sent them out at night to find food. But she warned them to avoid any danger. So the first cub, who was strong but lazy, headed out on the easiest route. He walked along until he came to a field that was hopping with rabbits. He quickly killed one rabbit and gobbled it down. He killed the second rabbit and took it home to his mother. He got back in just a little over a half an hour, and he didn't have a scratch on him. And his mother took a look at him and said, "What a fine rabbit you've brought home. Well done." And she gave him a lick with her tongue on the side of his face. The second cub was very clever. She took off in another direction, across rolling fields. And after a while, she saw a farmhouse in the distance with the lights on. So she crept up very carefully. She found a hole in the fence near the hen house. She went through it, went into the hen house, and quickly killed 2 hens. She dragged them with her, ran out to the field where she ate half of one of the hens and buried the other half, thinking, I can come back tomorrow and get the other half. And she took the other hen home to her mother, and she got there in a little over an hour without a scratch on her. The mother took a look at her and said, "What a beautiful hen you have brought home. Well done." And her mother licked her with her tongue on the side of the face. The third cub was not very strong and sickly. The poor little guy was the runt of the litter. And because his older brother and sister went in the directions they went, he went in a different direction, a tougher direction, over the hills, where the farmhouses were few and far between, and they were all guarded by vicious dogs. The poor little fox came up near a fence of one. A dog got out, came over and bit him. The farmer heard what was going on, got his shotgun and shot in that direction, fortunately missing the little cub who ran away. He searched all night but didn't find any food. So he decided to go home. But on the way home, he found a little sparrow that he was able to kill. He was tired and he was hungry. But he decided not to rest and not to eat the little sparrow because he wanted to bring it home to share with his family. And when he got home, he was covered with mud, was bitten, and was bruised. And when his mother saw him, what do you think she said? Did she say, "What kept you? Look at the state of you. Didn't I say to you to stay away from trouble? And look what you brought back, a tiny sparrow, not enough to feed any one of us. Take it away and get out of my sight." Or did she say, "I'm glad to see you home. I was worried about you all night. You're dirty and you're hurt, but that dirt can be washed away. And with time, your hurts will heal. Even though you didn't bring much home, you tried all night. I love your perseverance. Next time, you'll do better." And then she gave him 2 licks on the side of his face with her tongue. Question: if you were the vixen, what would you do? The widow in whole year. The widow in the gospel gave to the temple everything she had to live on. She is held up by Jesus as an example for his disciples. So much so that we're still talking about her today. Jesus did not let the fear of authority stop him from preaching the good news of God's love. He was killed, but vindicated by God, he rose again. Jesus, who loves us more than we love ourselves, will be the one who welcomes us when we return home to the heavenly kingdom. He will not look at how productive we have been, but he will look at the effort that we made and the choices that we made. If you, like the widows, like Jesus, and like the little fox, give it all that you have, Jesus will welcome you joyfully. I'm not sure if he will lick you with his tongue on the side of the face, but I'm pretty sure he will give you a great big hug and say, "Well done, welcome home."